thanks, Bruno, for accepting my invitation for a short interview. And we came together at the SINAS conference, and we're missing the conference right now, as a matter of fact. So I don't want to take too much of your time. So I will start our 15-minute chat, and maybe we can talk about a couple of things about research, about mathematics, and so on and so forth. But yeah, I want to mention that we're slightly wet. We got wet together because we were trying to find the coffee flask of James Davenport. And I'm really feeling it right now, that it's started to get a tiny bit cold. And yeah, so I want to start with asking you about the origins of risk, because I mean, this is a really one place that is dear to my heart. This was my first postdoc port or harbor, let's say. And I really enjoyed my time here. So how did you decide that there should be an institute for symbolic computation? How did the idea came about?
Yes. So I founded the Research Institute for Symbolic Computation, in short, RISC. I founded it in 1985, at the same time when I also founded the Journal of Symbolic Computation, so it was the same year. But actually the origin of the idea of RISC dates back to the time when I did my PhD thesis, and this was in from 63 to 66. And at that time, I already integrated three aspects of mathematics in my interest or in my person. And one was that, of course, my thesis was a mathematical thesis. The task was to find an algorithm for generating a linearly independent basis of the residue class ring modulo an ideal generated by multivariate polynomials. So it was a completely mathematical question, which actually was already open for 65 years.
Okay.
And it was mathematics, pure mathematics. But mathematics where the task was to find an algorithm. So it was computer mathematics at the same time. And this is the second aspect. So one aspect is mathematics. The second aspect is algorithms, it's software. It is constructive mathematics, it's computers. And I already worked as a working student. I earned my money as one of the first programmers at my university, which was the University of Innsbruck in Austria. So I was one of the really very few programmers at that time. And I worked 40 hours and invented algorithms and implemented algorithms and found computer solutions for problems from all different areas in our university, for chemistry and physics and geography, etc., etc. So I had these two visions in my early life. And one was real mathematics and theoretical mathematics, and one was computers at the same time. And the third aspect was logic, because very early in my study, I did not feel really well with the level of proofs I heard in lectures and even in books. So yeah, I started to become interested not only what are the results of our mathematical doing, which of course is inventing theorems, inventing algorithms, but then of course proving what we are doing. And so I became very much interested, practically interested, how can we improve the quality of the proving activity. And of course this is logic. And I started to study formal logic myself, because there were no courses on logic, mathematical logic, at that time at our university. And so I really studied logic by self-study. I studied many books, and And so in this moment, when I finished my PhD, I already had these three aspects together in my personality. It's pure mathematics, computers, software, and logic. Okay, and these three things together, this for me is, so to say, the dynamic structure. And all these three aspects, they influence each other in many different ways. And in particular, since logic is the meta level of mathematics, and of course the meta level in mathematical logic, the meta level is mathematics. It's mathematics about mathematics. Yeah. And in our field, it's algorithmic mathematics about algorithmic mathematics. So this is like a cycle that goes higher and higher in the rounds and has no upper limit. And so this fascinated me since I was 24. When I did my PhD, I finished my PhD thesis, I was 24. And from this moment on, all my life, I tried to combine these three aspects. And so I leave out all the intermediate steps until 85. And 85, I became a professor at this university, Johannes Kepler University here in Linz, Austria, in 74. But immediately I tried to implement this vision of mathematics, this complete vision. Yeah? I tried to implement it in my institute, in my lecture, in the courses which I gave for the students. And very soon I tried to attract many PhD students.
Yeah, there's a huge momentum.
And then at a certain moment, since I also always had in mind that mathematics has to be applied, I started to work with companies also. So this was a kind of a fourth aspect. Or one could say the third aspect, which is computerization, put to the extreme, is that you really start to work for concrete problems, for concrete companies, etc., etc. And so after, from 74 to 85, I built this type of spirit up in my team, in rounds, and more money also, because if you
always helps.
if you do good research, you get money from research foundations, and if you do good work for the industry, you get money from the industry. So I got attracted more and more money, and then more people. And then it was clear that I wanted own institute, and also I needed a building outside the university, because inside the university it was very difficult to grow at that time.
There was no science park back then.
No. And also the understanding of mathematics as a driving force for the future of society and industry, etc. This was not so present at that time in the vision of a university, so that it was very hard to get even office space inside the university. So I decided to take all my money and looking for an attractive, special place outside the university, and I found this castle, which was a ruin. And then the government was very convinced and I think impressed by what I was doing with mathematics for industry and international students, etc., and foundational research. And they gave me the money for remodeling this ruin. And this is what you see now. This is the Castle of Hangberg.
Amazing accomplishment.
And this was a Risk Institute in 85. Yeah? And at the same time, I detected that what I was doing already since my PhD time, that this in the meantime had a name in international institutions and among colleagues. And some called it computer algebra, and some called it symbolic manipulation and mathematics in closed form, etc. Many different notions were around. But I decided to take symbolic computation for the following reason, because I didn't want to limit what we are doing to computer algebra. Because this meta level of mathematical logic and algorithmic logic, automated proving, automated programming, all these things, they are not really captured by the notion of computer algebra. It needs a wider notion, and this is symbolic computation, namely algorithms on symbolic objects. And symbolic objects are objects that are finitary, but their semantics is infinite. So, and then all this fits nicely into one vision. There is computer algebra, computer geometry, computer analysis, computer symbolic combinatorics, symbolic analysis, and also mathematical logic, theorem proving, automated reasoning, automatic programming. And all this together, I found that symbolic computation is a good name, and so I used this for defining the scope of the journal and the scope of my institute, and this was basically the same philosophy.
Yeah, and but the Journal of Symbolic Computation too. Both of the RISC and the JSC, they're at really high international level right now.
Yeah, thank you.
And well, that's a great story. So one side story that I want to ask: what were the other possible places that RISC could have been? So was that only the Castle of Hagenberg that you thought about?
No, by no means. It was more or less, it was by coincidence.
Sure.
It could have been any place.
I want to ask that, did you look at other places? Because I heard that there was a consideration of a mention in Gmunden, for example.
Yes. So this was actually later, because I wanted to expand this idea. And I thought, now next time, because I expanded the idea here. So there was RISC, and then I immediately started to create what I called then the software park, namely symbolic computation, all three aspects, foundational research, teaching, and application in the industry. But then I created a software park which is much bigger now. By now it has over 3,000 people working here in this little village around the castle. And the idea was exactly the same, but not limited to symbolic computation, but to any type of software activity, mathematical activity, numerics, and everything, and software whatsoever, databases, and today, of course, artificial intelligence, etc. So this grew much wider than just RISC, and I was the founder also of the software park, and I also was the director of the software park for many decades actually. And yes, it was a coincidence that this was this little village, because at the beginning I wanted to do this right next to the university, and I already had the money for doing it there. But the understanding at that time of the university was really very little, that this is something reasonable, and they did not support the idea. And the city of Linz, silly enough, the city of Linz, I asked them whether I could build my institute right in the next real estate to the university, which was Green Meadow. And then the city said, no, this is agricultural real estate, and we cannot build anything there, etc. In the meantime, there are gigantic office buildings there. So this was the situation, and therefore I had to look for places, other places, in some distance from the university, which is logistically not so good. But on the other hand, of course, with the castle, this is something really different, and it's unique, and it still has a big potential.
And Linz still benefits from RISC University.
Sure, because then I also founded an extra university for applied science, where we educate bachelor and master students for application.
Yes.
And this is what companies like. And our students educated in these institutions, they are really highly
Successful in Linz, yeah.
highly appreciated by companies all over Austria.
Yeah.
So this has a big influence now in this region, but all over Austria.
Yes. And I want to say that this software company is really... Oh, the 15 minutes went by. Wow. Let me take a little bit more of your time if you don't mind. But the 15 minutes goes by really fast. With you, it was just like 2 topics. But I have to say the software park is a really visionary idea. Nowadays, like having startups or small companies together is an idea in 2020. But I mean, back then in 80, 87, 80 or 95.
87.
It is such a visionary idea that, I mean, and it really expanded the visibility of this town, visibility of risk and everything too. So I wanted to ask you like 2 more things at the very least, or maybe even 3 more things about the book. So let's start from the least, the last thing that I wanted to ask first. So you wrote this book, Mathematics, Management and Meditation, and I tried to read it, but it's only in German. So one quick question is, when will we get the English version of it?
Yes, the English version, so the title will be a little bit more general. The title of the English version will be Science and Meditation, and leaving out the management, because management is in between. And I want to stress the 2 extreme endpoints on a big spectrum. So they are very different. And so I will concentrate on science and meditation. And this book is basically finished. It's only, so the German text is finished. I'm now just in the phase of translating it into English, and I want to publish it first in English and then in German. And after this conference will be over, which takes a lot of my time, I hope that I will be able to finish this in a couple of weeks, and then
I will get get a
to,
signature from you.
Yes, with pleasure.
The other thing that I wanted to ask is, so the symbolic computation community is sizely now, but I mean, how can it grow? Like, what is your vision? Like, how can it be, like, attract more people and like grow like the computer algebra and symbolic computation community? There are these events of these conferences, like hybrid symbolic numeric conference like SYNASC, or there are the purely combinatorics, purely computer algebra. Combinatorics is just the like ACA and so. Yes,
I think the important thing is very simple. It is basically what I said. If our own people, so to say, people who come to our conferences and who work in institutes like ours, they really have this broad vision that the better you want to be in the industry, in the applications, and the more creative solutions you want, the deeper you must dig. Not only in mathematics, but in the foundation of mathematics. Because what is mathematics? Mathematics is nothing else than cultivated common sense.
Good way to put it.
Cultivated common sense. And you can cultivate this common sense to every level, a very subtle level. So the meta aspect in mathematics is very important. We constantly must observe ourselves how this thinking process works, and in some way to automate it by automated reasoning, computer algebra, whatsoever. Actually, algebra and reasoning is only 2 different aspects. If one digs deeper, we don't have the time to expand on this. And answering your question, I think we, the people who work in this field, really must have the vision that, first of all, the really creative inventions which change the society, they are based on really deep insights in mathematics. And so we are in a good situation, but we don't tell it to people. We listen to talks and a person says, the machine can do this and it now can do this better than the human, and so on. It is so silly, because of course it's not the machines who can do it, but it's the algorithms.
It's the hundreds of people
invented by people like us. And they look like if the machine is doing something, the machine is doing nothing. It's the algorithm invented by people like you and me on higher and higher levels, more and more difficult algorithms, interesting algorithms, which need more thinking and more thinking. At the highest level in our thinking will always be human thinking by mathematicians. And now, of course, some people, they don't like the idea that all this is mathematics. Then they call it computer science, they call it artificial intelligence, they call it whatsoever. But basically, apart from the physical implementation of machines, this is engineering. Okay, it's engineering, and physics, etc., etc. Very important, of course, very important. But basically, software and applications of software and solving problems in real life by software. This is a deeply mathematical process, even if not in every application we need integrals. No. Mathematics is not only integrals. Mathematics can be any subject area studied in this particular mathematical way of
systematic
how
way,
we treat problems.
Yes.
Listening to what the problem formulation is as it is, it occurs in real life, and most of the time it's very vague. And already this modeling process, what we call the modeling process, needs high formal ability. And this is mathematics. And then you go through model formation and then formulating the problems and then solving the problems and based on deep mathematical knowledge, and then of course implementation and correct software, proving correctness and so on. And of course going back to the industry or to the companies or to the application field. And this is very important, answering your question, that this process of modeling real life to mathematics and mathematics back to real life, that these two end points are done by ourselves.
Of course.
And not left to people who then give talks, as we often hear.
The machines are the smartest.
Yes, where you get the impression, everything is here, and we need business people, and we need marketing people, and we need I don't know what. And just mathematics is not mentioned. Okay?
I think I like this term black boxing. This is really put all this mathematical effort into a black box and into like the literal black box of a computer, and then say that is smart.
In some way, one could also say that mathematics is the arts of thinking about something so deeply that at the end you can put it in a black box and you never have to think about this again in the application. But the sociological, I'm speaking about the sociological, psychological aspect as an answer to your question, what could we do to expand the visibility, the importance of our field. And I think this is our own fault, that we stay in the inner box where the problems are really difficult, problems are solved by us, but we don't go to the outside in the face of modeling and go to the outside in the face of application. We leave this to other people who earn the big money, who earn all the praise, who earn all the credits, and who speak with the politicians and society, and people think, yes, this is all done. Why do we need mathematics? We eliminate it in school, and all these mathematicians they sit in these castles.
I mean,
Yeah, this is our own fault. Yeah, it's
that's
our
true,
own fault.
and
yeah.
that's exactly why I want to have this chat series as well.
Yes,
That's
yeah.
because mathematicians are most of the time really underrepresented.
Yes,
And
underrepresented.
they do great things, but they're
But
so
it's
humble.
our own fault. Our own
Yeah,
fault.
they're
Because
really
I often speak with colleagues and say, yes, we don't want to, so to say, speak with the outside world, and they are also silly, and politicians are silly, and everything is silly. No. We have to take
It should be
the real
explained.
world
It should be
very
brought to people.
serious.
Yeah.
And try also to improve our communication,
Yes.
so that we can speak with everybody in their language.
Yeah.
And not that these people must learn the mathematical language to speak with us. This is wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
They just need to understand that. I mean, there is something that is valuable there.
Yeah, and therefore also in my education, I tried. It did not always work. I tried to convince many master students and many PhD students that they must learn to speak to real world.
Yeah.
In both directions. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that this is part of mathematics, is clear articulation, clear structuring, clear formulation. Okay, in natural language, not in symbols. Okay?
I want to ask my last question, and that is about like how humble most of the mathematicians are, and how humble you are. That you actually named this one basis that you mentioned after your advisor, Gröbner. I mean, of course, Buchberger algorithm of calculating this Gröbner basis is also out there, but Gröbner basis became a name that, I mean, everybody knows, Buchberger algorithm as well. I don't know. I haven't found something that big that I would be happy to give it to my advisor, but I don't know if I could. So I don't know how humble, how humble you were, or how humble can you be?
Yes.
How did
the
that?
fact is, for example, if you count the number of citations, okay, if you look up my name, then maybe I forgot what the exact number is,
but still thousands.
maybe 12,000.
Sure.
Okay. If you look up Gröbner basis, it's 40,000.
Of course.
Okay, so what you say could be a problem. Okay, I could be unhappy or something or whatever. But
I don't think you are.
Happy.
Yeah, I don't think you are unhappy.
And the thing is the following: when Gröbner, my PhD advisor, gave me the problem, he was 65, and he was exactly so old as the problem, and. He gave me this problem. I was a working student, and I only had one interest: to finish, because it was a terribly strenuous time. I had to work 40 hours programming and then studying. Okay? So I wanted to finish, and I made up my mind: next problem he is giving in his seminar, I will take. Whether it's differential equation, and he was very broad.
Okay.
Whether differential this or that or that. And then the next seminar was, he gave this problem, which I told at the beginning. And I thought, yeah, well, great, it's a problem. And it's good enough for PhDs, he says so. And it has to do with computers. So this is what I'm doing, 40 hours a week. Yeah. And I'm the only one who can maybe do this. And I immediately jumped onto it. I did not know how important the problem was. Yeah. I did not know how difficult it was. And then I said to him, Professor Gröbner, is there any literature on this subject? And he said, yes, you already studied my book, and you studied book of Van der Waal. I already studied all this. And I said, no, but for this particular problem. And he said no. And so great, don't have to read anything, I only have to use my brain. Yeah. And then I sat, and it was very difficult. I made no progress, and I thought, this problem is so easy to formulate, and I'm so silly. I'm a programmer. And I worked very hard, and then after some time, I got this idea, okay, and then everything ran smoothly. Yeah. But it was one idea, and I still know exactly at which time, at which place I got the fundamental idea. Then it needed a lot of time improving and so on, but the idea. And yes, but he never spoke with me. I got this problem, then I tried to speak with him again after 6 weeks. He had little time and so on. And he said, "Who are you?" I said, "Buchberger." "What do you want? Do you want to pass an exam?" "No." I said, "I'm working as a PhD student." "So what is the problem?" So I noticed this is inefficient, and I made up my mind to go to him only when I have solved this. Okay, so I worked for 1.5 years, and then I submitted my thesis.
Wow.
Okay, and the reaction from him was zero.
Wow.
Zero. He never told me, "You solved here." I said, No. I just got a little letter from the administration of our university and says, "You are admitted to the final exam for PhD." Okay, so I knew by logical reasoning that my thesis must have been accepted. And I went to the final exam. He did not say anything about my thesis, so I was frustrated. I really was frustrated, and I switched the field. Did not hear anything again about the field.
Wow.
Only 10 years later, when I was already a professor, and I did other things in research, which were not completely silly, but but never became so famous as what I did in my PhD thesis. And but what I did in between was logic, and it was this, what I said, mathematical reasoning, which became so important now in our institute and in symbolic computation. So it was not lost time, not at all. But after 10 years, I was giving a talk in Germany at a university, and this was on my research at that time on the foundation of algorithms and logic, etc., etc. And then a person came to me, to my office before I gave the talk, and he said, "Mr. Buchberger, I want to tell you, I won't come to your talk." And I thought, he's very polite. He apologizes. And he said, "It's not because I have no time. It's because already the title of your talk is silly." Because the title of my talk was Machine-Independent Complexity.
Okay. Yeah.
Which, of course, looks silly, but it is
it's important,
not
I guess.
at all
It is the symbolic complexity. It's a
I
formal
was shocked.
complexity.
I was shocked. Okay. Yeah. And I thought maybe he's right, and I'm giving here a silly talk. So I took all my courage, and I said, "Mr. So and so, what are you doing in research, which is so important?" And he said, "Well, we now build software systems for algebra, computer algebra. We are building software systems, and already the most fundamental questions, we have no algorithms for them." And I said, "Give me an example." And he said, "Well, if you have finitely many multivariate polynomials and 2 more polynomials, you want to know whether this is equivalent, and there's absolutely no algorithm and no hope." I wrote just a paper with the conjecture that this is an algorithmically unsolvable problem. And the conjecture was reasonable because the Matyasevich problem for Diophantine equations is the same problem, only integers instead of reals. And this was proved to be unsolvable. So people believed it cannot be. And then I saw it, and I thought, this is what I did in my thesis. And I said, "Yes, Mr. So-and-so, I can give you the answer." And he looked at me as if I was coming from behind the mountains, because Austria is behind the mountains from Germany perspective. And he looked at me so quasi, yes, these Austrians, they are not only silly, but they are so silly that you give them any problem.
They say they know the answer.
They don't understand how difficult it is, but they say, "I can solve it because I'm a programmer." And then, "Please send me your paper." So I went back home to Linz and sent him my paper. And next day, he phoned me and said, "Oh, this is a marvelous, incredible, and just publish again," and so on and so on. Yeah? And from this moment on, it was like an explosion. And then in the meantime, the community was here.
Yeah.
Because in my time, when I was PhD student, the mathematicians did not at all care about
computers,
algorithms.
yeah, of course.
And the computer science had no idea about mathematics, okay? So I was in an empty space, okay? But now in the meantime, the community was here.
Occurred, yeah.
And the need was here from systems like later mathematics, all these systems. And then it was like an explosion and everybody became interested. And at that moment, only at that moment, until then I did not give any name to my invention. I just said these are bases defined in formula 4.1 in my thesis, but I did not give them an extra name. But in this moment, I understood that although Gröbner did not give me any attention, he gave me a problem where he knew it's fundamental, it's interesting, it's hard, and he did not even tell me that he was already working on this problem for 25 years.
Wow.
So he gave me, so to say, an enormous part of his career in the form of a problem. And then I understood that the best a good teacher can give to a student is a problem. And it's not the solution, it's the problem. And therefore, I decided in 1 second. It was when I understood this, and I saw that this is exploding now and that it's really important. Then I understood the importance. And then in 1 second, I decided I want to honor him for this gift. Okay. Yes. And I never. I never regretted it. Yes. And now, if I see, for example, when we celebrated his 100th birthday, he was already dead, but we celebrated this, and then we look to the internet, what is known about Gröbner. He was a great mathematician, one of these mathematicians who still had an overview about quotation all of mathematics, and how this interacts beautifully, and not me and none of his students was able to take his broad vision and fill it up.
I'm still seeing that.
And so he was a great mathematician, but then when we look to the internet, actually 99% of the dimensions in the internet of Gröbner was on Gröbner basis. And so this for me was a very, from the emotional point of view, a very moving moment.
Amazing, Well, thank you, Bruno. Thanks. Thank you so much for having this chat with me.
Okay.